Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Plato Wyngard and the Valley of the Immortals, chapters 4 to 5, by Mark and James Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 4. Plato was surprised how well Luther took the news of the Viper's appearance in town that morning. After flipping a table, punching a hole in the bar wall, and kicking a structural post in. Luckily, it didn't detract from the rest of the ramshackle structure that passed as a bar. After his rant, Luther immediately sat back down and gave Plato a "what next" look. They argued for the next hour over what they should do, if they should do anything, and whose turn it was to buy the next round. In the end, it was decided that they would conduct a small recon on General Tun's right-hand man. They were able to get the information about the Viper's whereabouts easily enough, as the whole town was buzzing with the news of his appearance. After a few hours of legwork and planning, they were able to set up for the night's activities. As Plato's old company sergeant major used to say, prior preparation prevents a piss-poor performance. That ethos had served him well over the years. A meeting was organized at an abandoned warehouse located on the waterfront. The intel Luther had coerced out of a junkie led him to believe the Viper was going to be there. The entire area was run down, and most of the surrounding buildings were also vacant, making it perfect for secret black market meetings and clandestine organizations to conduct their shadowy dealings. Luther was positioned to the southeast. Plato was on the northeast, with a young boy of 12 with a talent in reading lips. Armed with his own set of binoculars, he was able to give Plato a blow-by-blow account of what was said. And finally, Chi was positioned down the road, with a clear eye on the comings and goings of all players in tonight's little bit of theater. They moved into their positions a little before sundown, equipped with high-tech optics and comms linking each man. Also the insurance of a small firearm in case they were compromised. Plato opting for a Heckler & Koch HKMP-5SD suppressed submachine gun, and Luther something more becoming to his size, the FN Mag, a Belgian 7.62mm general-purpose machine gun. Plato had scoffed at the need for Luther's choice, thinking that it was overkill, considering the reason that they were there in the first place. But Luther argued that their quarry was considered to be one of the deadliest men in Vietnam, and that he wasn't going to take any chances. Everyone was extremely tense, waiting for the arrival of the Viper. Their patience was eventually rewarded when a lone black sedan silently arrived out of the shadows. The warehouse was shrouded in darkness. Luckily, Plato and his team were equipped with night vision devices. Plato counted 4 figures entering the warehouse, with one remaining behind with the car. Plato could make out the Viper and assumed the other 3 to be his flunkies, who were all carrying large military-grade cases. 5 minutes after their arrival, they had set up floodlights, which made Plato's job easier. The Viper was now seated at a table in the center of a main room, with his 3 security positioned at strategic positions close by. The Viper's reputation was well earned, as he sat perfectly still, but at the same time appearing relaxed. Where lesser men might be pacing or fidgeting, he appeared unperturbed. They had been waiting for nearly 30 minutes with no word from Chi, who had been told to communicate only when necessary, when another vehicle arrived. It was the same as the first, a black sedan, the sort government officials might use. 3 figures exited the car. The composition of the group caused Plato to show concern. A woman, obviously in charge, a large man, her security, and a smaller man, his hands cuffed behind him, to the rear wearing a sack over his head. The large man steered his captive into the warehouse. "Luther, Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Plato whispered. I am, brother. I can't make out their details, though, but I'm starting to get a really bad feeling about this, Luther replied. Why didn't Chi tell us about them? Plato said. It's probably the comms. The damn humidity plays havoc with the wiring. I'm sure he had his reasons, Luther said. The three figures had now joined the Viper and his men. The hooded figure was tossed to the ground, where he lay unmoving. Plato's offsider started to dictate what was being said in very clear English. You're late, the Viper warned sternly. I was held up dealing with our guest here, the woman replied coldly, nodding toward the still figure slumped on the ground. Why and where? The Viper asked. This amateur was stationed down the road. For what reason he never said, the woman said. I take it you've questioned him? The Viper hissed. Yes, though he has been surprisingly stoic, the woman replied. But we'll get to him in a moment, the Viper said. I have it, the woman announced. He was happy to part with it? The Viper was surprised. The woman laughed. Of course not, the woman said calmly. But I made him a deal he couldn't refuse. I take it, you disposed of the remains? The Viper queried. Like he never existed, the woman said. I don't like this, Luther said over the comms set. Me either. I can't make out who the woman is. You? Plato replied. No, but my finger is getting itchy as hell, Luther mumbled. Hold tight, we need more info, Plato said. Where is Tan Vien? The Viper asked. Close and safe, the woman said. Ah, ever the sentimental fool. You might strive to make everyone else think differently, but I know better. As long as it's safe and ready tomorrow night, I don't care, the Viper said. The woman nodded. Now as to this other matter. Show me, the Viper added. An icy trickle of fear ran down Plato's back. The woman's security companion picked up the figure from the floor and roughly dragged him to his feet and pushed into a seat opposite the Viper. The woman stepped forward and removed the hood, revealing the battered face of Chi. Son of a bitch, Plato muttered. Luther offered similar sentiments. To Chi's credit, and despite his wounds, he sat silently, a look of blatant defiance etched onto his face. So who are you? The Viper asked casually. The room remained silent. Ah, a tough guy. I don't believe your presence here is a coincidence. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you work for? Again, the Viper was met with silence. The Viper motioned, and the woman's large companion stepped forward and slammed a fist into Chi's head, the blow snapping his head back. Let's try this again. Your name? The Viper asked. Nothing. Chi was battered again by a crushing blow, this one smashing his nose to pulp. Chi looked around groggily. Blood bubbled through his ruined septum. He struggled the pain and glared back defiantly. The woman started to turn. Don't tell me you're feeling squeamish, the Viper said, amused by her reaction. Hardly. Your methods are rather basic. Mine, on the other hand, almost always guarantee success, the woman said, turning away to retrieve a small bag on the floor. As she turned, both Plato and Luther gasped as they caught her image. The Wraith! Both men said in surprise. Sheehan Thash, or, as she was better known, the Wraith, was a legendary figure during the American engagement, feared by both her friends and enemies. She was instrumental in the deaths of over 100 Allied soldiers between 1967 and 1972 at the end of a sniper rifle. And that didn't include the deaths caused by seduction and subterfuge. She was known as the Wraith because of the way she appeared and disappeared when dispatching her foe. Her appearance, along with the Viper's, was too horrible to even contemplate. "Plato, we have to do something," Luther insisted over the radio. I'm thinking, Plato replied. The Wraith had now opened her bag, revealing a string of surgical instruments. She lazily strode towards Chai, the glint of a long blade in her hand. Leaning over the battered Chi, she held the blade up and showed it to him. The look of horror at the blade and her expression of lust filled Chi with dread. Her hand moved in a blur as she stabbed his left eye and removed the white orb all in one movement, eliciting a piercing scream from Chi. Plato had just enough time to register Luther swearing over his comms when the sound of 7.62mm rounds tore into the warehouse. Plato didn't waste time trying to stop his partner as he proceeded to take out the two drivers silently with his suppressed SMG. Within the warehouse, all hell was breaking loose as Luther used his Mag 58 like a surgeon, tearing the interior security to pieces with the heavy rounds. Plato stopped for a split second and told his young sidekick to bug out. The boy barely nodded as he took off into the night. Plato proceeded to assist Luther in taking out the security. Both the Viper and the Wraith more than lived up to their names as they dived for cover. Both of them now turned their attention to the interior light sources. In a matter of seconds, the warehouse was once again shrouded in darkness. Both Luther and Plato had stopped firing and were trying to peer through the smoke and darkness. "Can you see anything?" Luther asked over his comm set. "Nothing. I'm going to move in. Cover me," Plato said, and before Luther could reply, Plato slipped from his vantage point and stealthily made his way down. Plato passed the vehicles and glanced briefly at the two drivers he had dispatched only moments earlier. Entering the warehouse, he could barely hear anything over the sound of his heart hammering in his chest. Moving forward in a semi-crouch, Plato surveyed the area around him through his gun sights. There was no movement at all, even from the prone figure of Chi. Then suddenly there was movement to Plato's right. He pivoted and was about to fire when he saw the hulking figure of Luther enter, his large machine gun raised with relative ease. Plato let out a breath, nodded, then motioned with his hand towards the unchecked area of the warehouse. Luther nodded back, and both men slowly advanced. They moved with practiced ease, both of them having years of experience with this manner of warfare. Just then, the sound of glass shattering and the roaring of a boat engine alerted them to the fact that something was wrong. Doubling their pace, they cleared the rest of the warehouse only to find a large, broken window. Peering out, they saw a black commando-style dinghy speeding away into the night. "They got away!" Luther thundered. "They got away, or we got lucky," Plato corrected. "We could have taken them," Luther growled back at Plato, only to find him running towards the slumped figure on the chair. Plato knelt beside Chi and gently pushed his head back. Luther was now at his side, and he swore grimly when they saw the bullet hole in his other eye socket. "Damn it!" Plato growled. "Those cowardly bastards! What do we do now?" Luther asked. "Once we get Chi out of here, we need to find out who Tan Vien is," Plato said grimly. Chapter 5. The following morning, Luther and Plato sat squished in the back of a taxi. Not from lack of room, but rather because of the curious, purple stain on one side. During the trip, Luther kept one eye on the stain and the other on the driver, who seemed more preoccupied with chain-smoking an entire packet of cigarettes than navigating through heavy city traffic. "So where are we going this time?" queried a weary Plato. "I already told you. A reluctant informant gave me a good lead. The man we're about to meet is apparently the best source on Tan Vien," replied Luther. "I'm confused. So is this going to end with us nearly being arrested again?" sighed Plato. Am I ever going to hear the end of it? The nursing home and the police took our money, and that 80-year-old woman accepted our apology, so no harm, no foul, responded Luther indignantly. Anyway, this is different. My informant swore on his mother's life that Tan Vien could be tracked from this shop. What shop? This one, Luther said, pointing out the window at what looked like two corrugated sheets of iron impersonating a business front. This looks promising, Plato said, rolling his eyes. Tip the driver. He did get us here alive. Just. Luther pushed the large timber door open with a grunt. A series of bells chimed as they entered. Plato was amazed at the diverse arrangement of stock that adorned the walls and shelves. Everything from exotic pets, military ration packs, and cheap Chinese toys. Turning a full 360 degrees, Plato couldn't work out what exactly the shop specialized in. What sort of shop did you say this was? Plato asked quizzically. I didn't, replied Luther sardonically. A bit of everything, I guess? Can I help you, gentlemen? A voice said from behind. Both men spun around. Plato was unsure how the shopkeeper had appeared from behind them, but he decided then and there not to underestimate the frail individual before him. I'm Mr. Chu. Whatever it is that you are seeking, I am sure that I can be of assistance, Mr. Chu rasped, while stroking a wispy white beard. He reminded Plato of Christopher Lee's version of Dr. Fu Manchu. He guessed the shopkeeper's age at somewhere between 60 and 120 years of age. Stooped at the shoulder, he wielded a short cane and a long pipe, something he continued to smoke despite the evident struggle to maintain his breathing. My name is Plato, and my associate is Luther. We come seeking information, Plato said neutrally. A friend of ours told us that you know where we can find Tan Vien, Luther interjected. At the mention of Tan Vien, there was an immediate change in the old man's demeanor. Mr. Chu shuffled quickly over to the entrance, as if being pulled on skates. He then engaged a large iron bolt, locking the door. So what do you know of Tan Vien? Mr. Chu asked. We're old friends. We're concerned for his safety, Luther responded. What if Tan Vien doesn't want to be found? Mr. Chu asked. What did they look like? Asked Plato. Suits, European accents, quiet and reserved, but an air of arrogance, Mr. Chu said, taking a long drag on his pipe. Any defining features, scars maybe? Plato asked. Mr. Chu shook his head. Tattoos? Luther added. Mr. Chu's eyes lit up. A tattoo of a wolf on the wrist of one, very detailed. There was something very familiar about it a long time ago. Maybe Bei Soi? Mr. Chu said, struggling to recall the long, forgotten memory. Bei Soi? Plato whispered to Luther. Is that the gang from the old quarter? I know they deal in prostitution and dabble in the black market. They wouldn't be dealing in anything that the Viper is involved in, though. Luther reasoned. Mr. Chu had now gone silent. Is everything all right? Plato asked. Mr. Chu gave a rattly breath, then walked slowly over to a small, ornately carved chair and sat down. The Viper is searching for Tan Vien? Mr. Chu asked, concern evident. We think he knows where he is. He was seen talking to the Wraith. Mr. Chu shook his head at this name. She mentioned that it was safe, said Luther. Safe, Mr. Chu repeated, deep in thought. Tan Vien is not a who, but rather a what? A rare statue, one of the 4 immortals. Tan Vien Son Tan is the god of the mountain and the god of the water. The statue was carved from a rock that fell from the sky. It is said that its arrival formed the mountains. It is priceless, but its value is more than just that, Mr. Chu said, then paused as he struggled to catch his breath. What's more valuable than money? Plato asked. Tan Vien is but one of the immortals. When he is reunited with the other three, it is said. Mr. Chu paused. Yes? Plato added. Both he and Luther were listening intently. Life. When the four immortals are reunited and placed upon an altar in the heart of Vietnam, they will reveal the Jade Cup. Whoever shall drink from it will be granted immortality, Mr. Chu said, then went into a coughing fit. This lasted several seconds, the old man eventually gaining control. And now that you know about the immortals, what are your intentions? There was silence. Plato ruminated over this information and what Mr. Chu wanted from them. I came to your country 7 years ago, for reasons I no longer really know. I stayed after my countrymen had left. At first it was because I was a little ashamed to go back. Then later I remained because I loved this land and its people. You ask us our intentions. To be honest, I'm not really sure, but one thing I do know is, if the Viper and the Wraith want it, then we have to do everything we can to prevent the four immortals from falling into their hands. Whether all that mumbo-jumbo is true or not, I don't know. But if those two get it, misery will follow because they're evil to the core, Luther said plainly. Mr. Chu was silent. Then, ever so slightly, a grin formed upon his ancient face. You're a good man, Luther. Not only will I give you the information you desire, but I'll do it for free, Mr. Chu said. If the Wraith has the statue, and from what you've told me is correct, she has it in a safe place. It can only be in one place. Where? Plato asked. Before she became the assassin known as the Wraith, she was Chien Thatch, an orphan who grew up in a local brothel. You might know it as the Jade Palace. You ask me what is more important than money, Mr. Chu said. Both men looked a little sheepish at the mention of this establishment. I see you are acquainted with it, Mr. Chu said with a grin. Both men nodded. Well, this is common knowledge to most. But what isn't is the fact that the Wraith still has strong ties with the girls and management. Unbreakable ties, in fact. If she says it's safe, then the Jade Palace is where it's being kept. Do you know where exactly? Plato asked. Mr. Chu shook his head. That, my friends, is something you'll have to discover on your own, Mr. Chu said. Thank you, Mr. Chu, Luther said, and both men turned to leave. One last thing, Mr. Chu said. Both men stopped and regarded the old man. If you manage to get the statue, and not get yourselves killed, you need to pay a visit to the Red Temple Monastery, the one on the south side of town. Do you know it? I do, Luther said quickly. This is important. You need to ask for the monk, Mr. Chu said slowly. Any monk? Plato asked. Number, you need to ask for the monk. Tell them I sent you. Now, the monk is very old and has taken a vow of silence, but he's still very sharp. Give him this, Mr. Chu said, and tossed a coin towards Plato, who caught it in one hand. Plato regarded the coin. It was 3 centimeters in diameter and carved from ivory. On one side was the image of the Buddha surrounded by a ring of light, and on the other, the 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, and water, surrounding a plain cup. Plato studied it, then stared at the old man. Who are you? Plato asked in an almost accusatory tone. There's no time for that. The Viper is on his way as we talk. Now we must all go, Mr. Chu said with a cough. Crap, Plato said, then with real concern. Are you going to be all right? I will be fine, because I will no longer be here. Good luck, gentlemen, Mr. Chu said. One last thing, Luther said. Mr. Chu nodded. Give up the pipe. It's going to be the death of you. The old man laughed and waved them away. Plato grabbed his friend by the arm and they fled into the street. Once outside, they waved down a taxi and jumped in. Plato gave the driver double the fare to get away as quickly as possible. They both stretched out on the back seat, contemplating the information they had been given. "What now?" Luther asked. "We need to see a man about a brothel," Plato said. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Plato Wyngard and the Valley of the Immortals has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quills books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.